Here's how you can build an automation that allows you to spy on your competitors. So in this automation, I'm going to be working as someone who builds automations for Cotswold Outdoors. They're essentially a massive outdoor company here in the UK, and they sell a bunch of different jackets and other outdoor equipment. So the product I've picked here is the Patagonia Women's Boulder Fork Rain Jacket. And as you can see, they've got a sale on and they're selling it for £150. So that's what I've put in here. And then the automation has gone and it's found all the other retailers that sell this exact same jacket. So we've got Patagonia's own website, we've got shore.co.uk, Babipur and Grieve Sport, and it also goes and extracts the price at which they're selling this jacket for. This is so the product listing people at Cotswold Outdoor can then go and make some really good informed decisions on where to price their products in a really quick and efficient manner. They don't need to sit there and manually click on every single link on Google, extract the price, put it into a sheet themselves, and it saves a bunch of time, especially when you're listing hundreds and hundreds of different products. And this can be used for anything. It's not just exclusive to outdoor products or camping equipment. You can use it for games, for TVs, consoles, pretty much anything you want, you can use it for. So the very first module we have here is the Google Sheets module, and this is to watch for any new changes that occur in the sheet. So every single time you go and add a new product or a new price, this will trigger this automation. I've also set up this filter over here, and this is just to ignore the header in the Google Sheet. So if I flick over to the Google Sheet here, you can see row 1 is the header, and we don't want to include that because it doesn't have the product name or the product price. So our automation isn't going to work with row 1. So I've just made sure that there's a filter here to make sure that it doesn't pick up that header. Awesome. After that, we have a router. A router essentially allows the automation to work in 2 different steps. So over here, we have the first step, which is this row over here, and then we have the second step, which is the row over here. I'm going to explain a bit more about this step later on in this video, but for now, let's focus on the top step over here. So we've gone and pulled the product name from our product sheet here, so Patagonia Women's Boulder Fork Rain Jacket. So what we're going to do is essentially we're going to run a Google search on this term. So the API will go and it will search on Google for this Patagonia jacket, exactly how it's written in the sheet. The only issue is our API over here by Bright Data doesn't accept spaces within their API. They only accept pluses. So there's an easy fix and workaround for this. All you need to do is go to the tools section over here, and under product name, we need to replace the spaces over here with pluses. This is a variable value. You can get this from ChatGPT, or you can learn how this works in make.com. Essentially just replacing all of the spaces within the product with pluses. So for example, if I wanted to go get this from ChatGPT, let's do this live. I am using make.com and I want to remove the spaces from a text using and what module were we using? We were using a set variable module. So using a set variable module, right? And if I click here, it should give us the formula over here. So add a step variable and then replace your text variable. Then it's just put a space. We can put whatever we want, and then we can put a plus. So if I adjust this prompt a little bit more, we can get a more accurate response. So I'm using it. I want to remove the spaces from a text, and I want to replace the spaces with a plus icon, right? With a plus. And let's put this plus in here just so it's super easy for ChatGPT to understand, because this is exactly what we want to go and do. And you can see here, we set the replace function and then your text, which is our text from the Google Sheet. And then it's just put a space icon here. But like I said, there is a space variable in make.com. So you can just use that to make it a little bit more robust. And then lastly, just the plus icon in these 2 apostrophes over here. And that should work, right? This is exactly what it should look like over here in make.com. And you can set this formula right in and it should work. Or you can just understand how this works using make.com's own documentation. Either way works really well. Okay, so now that we've got the whole search term formatted exactly how our API works, I'm going to show you in depth exactly how this Bright Data SERP API works as well. So as you can see over here, we have our HTTP URL. This is the request we're making, and it's a post request. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can get all these details and how to set up an API in make.com. And then the content type, which is your application JSON, and then the value is actually authorization is the bearer token. This allows Bright Data to know who's making the request so they can charge you accordingly, hence why it's blurred out. And then of course we want the content type to be JSON, and then the request content, we want the SERP API, and we put the product name from the tools section from before, because like I said, this API doesn't accept spaces in the request. It needs to have a plus instead. So we use the formatted version we did before, and we put that into the requested content. And we also have pass response ticked as yes. This just allows all the JSON that this is going to return to be parsed properly in make.com, so we can then use it later on in the automation. So how you can set this whole thing up and where you get all these fields to fill in is using the Bright Data website. So as you can see here, if you just Google SERP API Bright Data, all of this, this page should pop up, and you can just click start free trial. There's no credit card required. And also, when you actually do go into using this, and if you decide to use this on a large scale, Bright Data have a really affordable, scalable plan that makes it really easy to use. Start free trial here, and you can build this automation for free for now. So once you've signed in, you've got everything done, you should come to a page like this and just click on proxies and scraping. And then under scraping solutions, you should see the SERP API. This is the one we're interested in. What this does is essentially searches that search term, essentially this one over here from our Google Sheet, into Google. So it will go and it will search that on Google, and it will grab all the web pages from Google that have popped up with that search term. This is great because this is exactly how you and I go and find products, right? If we're interested in buying a new iPhone, for example, we'll type in iPhone 16 Pro Max into Google, and there'll be a bunch of different pages, whether that be from Amazon, eBay, or whatever other retailers, and then we go compare the prices between those and then make a decision on which one we want to buy. So this is exactly the same way we're doing it, just through automation. We're going on Google, we're searching through our competitors' websites and finding the price. Okay, so once you got to this page, you need to click Get Started, and then you need to click Add. And just to go over costing, so Bright Data have this really cool pay-as-you-go plan. Unless you're a big enterprise company, then you can click Upgrade Plan and actually go and buy, much larger requests. But if you're just testing this out, which you probably are with this automation, let me go, where did I go from here? Web scrapers, no, we want to go to proxies and scraping, and then we want to go to SERP API. You can see here, it's $1.50 per CPM. What a CPM means is essentially 1,000 requests that have successfully been completed. So once you've made 1,000 requests that have all been successfully done, it'll cost you $1.50, and this scales exactly by that exact amount, right? So you can divide 1,000, by $1.50, and that's how much it would cost you per each time you run it. So this scales exactly like that, and that's how this works. And the great thing about Bright Data is it essentially it doesn't cause any problems when you're scraping something. They have workarounds. So for example, it has a captcha solver in case Google throws a captcha at you, it will automatically solve it. And this one here fetches organic and search results and ads, and this one fetches a greater variety. I just use the standard version. It's plenty enough for this automation over here. So all you need to go is click Add. I've already got a SERP API 1, which is set up the exact same way, so I'm not going to click Add, but essentially you just click Add, and then it gets added to your Bright Data account, which is really, really cool. So now you're actually on the page where we can go and configure our make.com API, and we use this SERP API 1 over here, and make sure it's flicked on. And here we have all the content we need to implement into make.com to get this to work. So we have our API token, which is just the bearer token. Again, it's blurred out. And then we have the curl, which is the request, the content type, which we have over here, and then all the other information we need. So if we flick back, you'll notice some patterns between this terminal over here and how we set it up in make.com. So if I flick right back over to here, you can see our URL request is exactly the same as it is on Bright Data. So you can see the URL request, CCurl is the HTTP API Bright Data request right here, right? As you can see, the CCurl is exactly the same as the URL over here. And the second thing is, the method is post. And if I flick over here, you should just set this as post as we're getting request, and we're not, we're trying to post data there, and we're not, trying to get data, we're trying to give data over to Bright Data. So that's why this is post. And then we have content type is JSON, and then we can ignore this. We need the content type over here. This is a header. This is -h, which means it's a header. And that's why make.com has its own header section over here. So content type, and we put application/JSON, that matches exactly here as the header. And then we have the authorization and then the bearer token, right? So authorization bearer and authorization over here. And then we have the bearer dash. You can't see it here because I blurred it out, unfortunately, but it's just bearer and then my actual code over here. And then lastly, if we scroll over down to here, content type is JSON over here. And then this is the main bit where we're actually putting in our request, right? So we have the request content, and we've essentially just gone and copied and pasted all the request content from here and put that into our section over here. Body type is set as raw, and then you see here HTTP Google/request queue. So in the Bright Data example, they're searching for pizza, right? You can see over here search, and then the query is pizza. We want the search query to be our structured output we put from this tools module over here into our search query over here. So we just put that variable in make.com. So if I just click here, you can see you have a bunch of variables. We just put this product name into this section over here. And also I've just set the country as GB because Cotswold Outdoor is a GB, it's a UK company. So there's no point us getting US results for like Patagonia coats, because if I'm looking for a Patagonia coat and I'm based in London, I'm not going to be looking at US sites, right? I'm only going to be looking at UK sites. So the same way I set the country as GB over here. Again, if you're not super technical, I wouldn't stress too much about how to set this API up. I've just showed you how to do it step by step, pretty much using all the Bright Data information and just putting it into Make. But the great thing is you can also ask ChatGPT or Claude how to do this. If you just copy all the information, maybe get rid of your bearer token just in case, and essentially just put your bearer token as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just as an example, and then ask it, and then just upload a picture of this HTTP page into Claude and ask it, how should I fill in all these sections? And it will automatically go and tell you how to fill it in. See, that's the great thing about AI and the whole new revolution with AI. Us non-techie people are catching up to the techie people using AI as, our base. We can figure out how to set all these things up by just asking it these questions. It's like having your own techie person on demand all the time. And that's what makes building automations now using no code and AI super, super valuable. Anyone can do it. This is exactly what I was saying earlier, right? So I've got the image of the make.com module. I've added in the information from Bright Data. Of course, I've changed my bearer token to bearer123, but of course that's just for security purposes. And then ChatGPT will go step by step and tell you how to set this module up. And if that module doesn't work, you can still go back to ChatGPT and troubleshoot with it. And at some point after a few iterations, it should set up this API for you, and you don't need to have any technical knowledge to actually do it, which is really, really cool. So that's a really handy trick when you're trying to set up APIs and you're not really too sure what to do. Just ask ChatGPT. Awesome. So now that we've set up our Bright Data SERP API, the next step over here is going to be to set up a counter. This is because in our sheet, I've only got enough spaces for 5 URLs, right? So when we get a Google search return, we might get 40 URLs, and then the automation will go and scrape all 40 of those websites and give me 40, price comparisons. Now, if you're running a company and this automation isn't just just a test and to show you guys how this works, that might be really useful. But I don't want 50 product pages to be shown in my Google Sheet. It's just going to be information overload, and it's going to make it look really messy. So that's why I've done this really nifty trick, which is set up a counter. So it's a really, really cool trick to learn in make.com if you only want an automation to run a certain number of times, but there's no real way to control that. So right now, we've got a variable at the counter at 0 right now, right? And I'm going to discuss more about this counter in a bit, but that's the purpose of this module over here, and I'll come back to it. Awesome. So now that we've got the counter set to 0, we've got an iterator set up, and this is essentially grabbing all the data and all the different points from our SERP API. So it's grabbing all the URLs, all the web pages, and essentially it's going to go through them one by one through the rest of this process over here. So all of this section over here is going to go through each one by one. So for example, Patagonia might have one and it would have a URL, it'll go through this process. Then for example, let me see another one. For example, shore.co.uk might have another one, and it will go through this process again one by one. So the iterator will essentially grab that array that Bright Data has given us and essentially make it go through this entire process one by one. So now we've got our Patagonia link. We want to set another variable named counter. This is again relating to the counter. We also want to make sure that the counter is less than 5 and we don't include any links in our Google search from Cotswold Outdoor. This is obvious. This is mainly because we are Cotswold Outdoors. We know what our prices are for this fictitious client that I'm currently working for. So we don't want any more cotswoldoutdoor.com, links in our search. We only want to ensure that we have searches from other companies because that's what we're more interested in. So we want to make sure our link does not include cotswoldoutdoor.com. And we also want to make sure we're not going past counter number 5 because we only want 5 different links to show up in our Google Sheet, so our Google Sheet isn't huge. Great, so once we've done all those checks, we go and actually scrape the web page. And that's where we use to scrape product page over here. So we have the URL and then we use a get method. This is just to make a request module, exactly the same as the actual API we called. But here we're just going to the website and we're requesting all of its HTML. So all the data and all that computer language, which is essentially HTML, we're trying to request all that data so we can sift through it and find the price and find the product. So that's what we're doing here. We're essentially requesting all the HTML from the link. Now, this is where stuff gets really interesting, right? Because sometimes when you go to scrape a page, and I'm going to show you an example, it might not work. This is because some companies don't want other companies scraping their web page and finding the prices because they don't want you to have this price comparison. It's a competitive market, right? So they'll put practices in place such as captures and other anti-scraping measures to make sure that you cannot scrape their page and you cannot grab their details. And perhaps if you want to copy their listing or if you want to grab their price like we're doing, they don't want to allow you to do it. So we found a workaround with that. And again, this is where bright data is so useful. And especially if you're doing this on a really large scale, then that's a much more robust solution. This option over here is free. And of course, the bright data version will be paid, but you won't be able to scrape certain pages such as bestbuy.com. I know is a really famous one where they don't allow scraping. Amazon also have some severe scraping, protections because these are large companies. So they're not going to want you to scrape their website and they have those built into their site. So I've built another automation. It's exactly the same, but the only main difference here is, if I show you over here, we have the bright data scrape product page. And this comes from over here. When I go to proxies and scraping, you can see they have a web unlocker API. This is automated scraping for the hardest sites. So this leverages residential proxies, it solves captures, and it's way better if you're trying to build a really robust automation that bypasses all of these different anti-scraping measures. So an example of a site that won't allow us to scrape is this one here, right? It's selling the exact product we want, the Boulder Fork rain jacket for women, right? So if I copy this link and I go to our free method, which is directly in make.com, it's just a make a request module. It's super useful. And we're just putting the link in, nothing too fancy, right? And I run this module and I paste this link in, make sure it's got no spaces. It doesn't have any spaces, perfect. And I click OK, right? You can see here, 403 forbidden is not allowing us to access and grab the HTML from this website. So we cannot scrape this site using just make.com's make a request module. However, if I switch over to my other automation here, which is exactly the same, if I show you, the only main difference is this bright data product page over here. And if I right click this and I click run this module and I paste in the link, right? And if I click OK, you can see it's going to run and it's the exact same link as the one I showed you before. And this might take a minute. You can see here, it's gone and it's scraped the entire page for us and it's unblocked the whole website. So you can see over here, this one wouldn't work for something like ray.com, but the bright data one will. So it's far more robust if you want to get all the data you physically can. And again, setting up this API for the bright data version of this automation is super simple. It follows the pretty much exact same instructions as the SERP API. As you can see, it looks super similar, right? The URL is exactly the same. Post method is exactly the same. The bearer token over here, exactly the same kind of idea. The main difference here is just this request content because you're requesting a different API. We're no longer requesting a SERP API. We're requesting a web unlocker API. And then the URL is super simple. You just put in the actual link that we got from the iterator. So this can be like patagonia.com, ray.com. It can be whatever URL you're trying to scrape. And as long as that gets put into here, that's all fine. And then you just put pass response as no. And that's all set up. It's exactly the same as you do with the Bright Data SERP API. So now that we've scraped the website and we've grabbed all the HTML, HTML is essentially how websites are coded, and it kind of tells it how to format the website. We don't want the HTML necessarily. We kind of want that HTML to be in text. This is because HTML is super long, like it's just like thousands of characters long, and we want an AI to go and look over that entire website and find the price for us. So we want to minimize how many tokens we use when we're going to get to these further modules here, and I'll explain exactly what that means later. So we want to turn this HTML from this module into text. And that's why we use this text parser over here, and it's set up super simple. It only has one variable. You essentially just put the data from the website we scraped into the text parser, and this text parser will turn that HTML into text. Okay, so now that we've got all our HTML into text, we've got this module over here, which is get multiple variables. So this is where we're grabbing all these different variables here, and this won't make much sense at this point in the automation since this is the first time, I'm showing you how it runs. But if I zoom over all of this part right to the end over here, this is where we're setting variables, right? So you can see here, we're setting variables. So the variable value is the link, and we're setting the site as the counter, which is, for our example, counter is 0 at the moment because we set our variable over here as counter equals 0. So over here, we're getting the first URL that we're passing, and we're setting that as counter equals 0 plus 1. So site1 URL, and then that's what it would look like if the counter was 0, because this is just adding 1 to it. So site, the sum of counter, which is 0, plus 1, and then URL at the end. So site1 URL, and then the variable value is the actual link we got from the iterator. So for example, if this round of this go from this iterator over here, one second, let me delete this module. So this round over here, right, we're going through this once with the first URL we've got. So over here, this URL might be like patagonia.com. We're setting this variable as site1 URL, right? And we're also setting site1 price as the ChatGPT that's going to go and extract the price, which I'll explain in a second. And then the counter, we're also setting the counter value to 1. So the first time this runs, great. We've got variable name count. We're getting the variable counter, right? We're getting that variable which we set over here. This might be a little bit confusing, but we're setting the counter variable as 0 over here, and then we're getting the counter variable right here, and then we're passing it through. And this should essentially mean every single time this iterator goes through here, the counter will add 1 every single time. So patagonia.com might pass through once, then ray.com might pass through twice. And this will mean that this counter number will become 1. So then this will be site of some counter 1 plus 1 makes it 2. So then ray.com will be site 2 URL instead of site 1 URL, which was Patagonia. Does that make sense? I don't know why I'm asking if that makes sense, because you're obviously watching the video. If it doesn't, drop a comment. I'll try to explain it a little better. But essentially, it's adding and giving a title. It's giving a title to every single URL over here. It's a little bit complex, but it kind of just makes sense because it's adding 1 to the counter every single time. So then the next time you run the third URL, this will be site 3 URL, and they'll set it there, and site 3 price is there. This is so, we have all the prices and all the sites correlated to each other so we can use it later on in the automation essentially. Okay, so now backtracking on this automation to these 3 ChatGPT nodes over here. So this is how they're prompted and this is how they're set up. So the goal of the first ChatGPT node is just to make sure that, we're not grabbing the same domain again. So essentially if patagonia.com have one for a blue jacket, a gold jacket and a silver jacket, I don't want all 3 of them to be from the same site because they're likely to be the same price, and that's not super useful for us. So the first ChatGPT module is just going and here's a new URL. I want you to look through site 1 URL, site 2 URL, site 3 URL, site 4 URL, and site 5 URL, and tell me if this matches any of these URLs essentially. And we've got a filter here. If it doesn't match any URLs, it passes through this automation to be set as a variable. If it does have a URL, then it won't go through this automation over here. And then it won't add to the counter. So then we'll always have 5 different, products from different URLs on our search. This is also why we are getting these multiple URLs at this point in this automation. This is because we want to get site1 URL, get site2 URL, get all the different site URLs, so that then we can go and pass it into ChatGPT. So for example, over here, if this passes for the first time, it won't get any variables because there are no variables set, right? And as it passes through, over here, it will be set as, site1 will be set as patagonia.com, for example, right? So the next time we run it through and it uses a second URL in this iterator, when it gets URL 1, that will be patagonia.com, and that will get passed through into this ChatGPT module over here, which means it will have, oh, here's ray.com. Does that match patagonia.com? Obviously, ChatGPT will say no, because ray.com does not match patagonia.com, and then ray.com will pass through over here, and that will be set as the site variable 2. The second thing we also want to establish is if this page is a product page or a review page. We only want product pages where we have retailers selling this item, right? So this is how this is prompted. So here you are a specialized e-commerce classifier. Here is some information, and essentially we have the URL being scraped, and then the scraped text, and then the target name. So this is the product name, the URL, and also the scraped text. So for example, we're just making sure that this page over here is not a product page, essentially. So we want to make sure it is a product page. So over here, we're looking to make sure that determine if it's a dedicated product page for the specific item that we mentioned. Ideally, you know, it could have an add to cart or buy now button. It doesn't look like a review. It isn't like a marketplace listing showing multiple of the same product, or collection page showing, you know, many items, and it isn't, and it is a search results page. So the only option is yes if it's a dedicated product page, and no if it's not. And essentially we go through here and we have a filter again. If ChatGPT results yes, so it is a dedicated product page, it's exactly what we're looking for, then it passes through. If it doesn't, then it goes through the next iterator over here. And the last thing we do, if it satisfies both these demands, that, you know, it's not a site that's already been added, it is a product page, is then we lastly go and get the price. And this is exactly how this module here is prompted. Here is the text being scraped from the product page. We have the text, and then we have the item. So we have all the text from our text parser, and then the actual item. Identify and return the item price with the correct currency symbol. Even though I've set the, you know, the search results to be GB, occasionally some euros and dollars items come through, so I just want to make sure that, you know, we've got the right currency and we've got the right price. And then we tell it to not make up any prices. If you cannot find the price, then put NA, do not include anything else in your response. And then we go and grab the price, and then lastly we have that tools module that I explained earlier. Okay, so now that we're 80% through the automation, all the hard stuff has pretty much been done with this top branch. We now just need to have a look at the bottom branch. So remember how this module over here, we set site1 URL, site2 URL, site3 URL, site1 price, site2 price, site3 price. So we're just grabbing all of those variables here, right? And as you can see here, it's just doing exactly what I said, grabbing all these variables. So once we've grabbed all the variables, on the odd occasion, we do get some sites that advertise their prices in euros, or sometimes they advertise their prices in USD. So we also want to grab a conversion rate for those, so we can pass that on to ChatGPT to give us an accurate price in pounds, because that's what we're interested in converting, because Cotswold Outdoor have all their prices in pounds. And the way we do that is by using another API. And this API is super simple to set up, and it's using one of my favorite sites called Rapid API. So we're using the Currency Converter Pro API over here. And the reason I love this one in particular is they have a really good free plan, right? You can do 3,000 requests, which means you can get these currencies 3,000 times a month for completely free, right? So their free plan is super generous. And of course, if you need more and you're doing this on a massive scale, then you can obviously upgrade your plan to 20,000 or a million, whatever you're really looking to do. And again, how you'd set this up is exactly the same way I showed you before. You can input all of this stuff into ChatGPT and it will give you all the information, but you can see all of them follow a similar sort of structure. Here, it'd be a GET request. The URL would be exactly this one over here. And there's only one header, which is the Rapid, oh, there's two headers, sorry. We have the Rapid API host, which is just this one over here. And the second header is an API key, which I've blocked out, but it's super simple to use. Again, you can copy and paste this into ChatGPT and use my little trick to find out how to put this into make.com. But it just follows the exact same pattern as the ones we did with Bright Data. So just to show you exactly how you can get to the page I was on before, you want to go to the Currency Converter Pro page over here, and then you want to go to latest rates. And once you come to latest rates, that's the API we want to do. You can see it's a GET request. And here's all the information you need. But before you go and copy and paste all this information over here, if you click on this params button, this way you can set up your API to do exactly what you want. So I know our base currency is Great British Pounds, right? GBP. And our currency we perhaps might want to convert from would be euro. So if you just enter this in over here, as you can see, it's changed the URL to do exactly what you want. So now you know when you input the value, it'll be GBP, and the currencies it will convert from is euro into GBP. So that way you can have it already set up, and then you just have to copy and paste this stuff in using the params feature here on Rapid API. When you've got the latest conversion rate for this run, you want to set them up as a variable. So we've got euro to GBP conversion rate over here and USD to GBP conversion rate over here. And once we've set these up, we can go pass them into ChatGPT. I'm going to show you exactly how the analyze price section is prompted. So this is exactly how I've set up this ChatGPT module. The first thing is I'm using O3 Mini, which is OpenAI's new system that can actually think. The main reason is this task does require some thinking. So essentially, we've told the agent that they are a retail pricing analyst, and I'm going to provide a bunch of prices, and essentially I want to get some actionable feedback on what to do with these prices. Like I said, the main point of this automation is to tell you where your products are priced. Have you priced them too low? Have you priced them too high? Are they just about right? So that's kind of the main purpose of this, to inspire decision making. So we've got the currency conversion rates over here, and then it will go and convert the competitor currency conversions into pounds, and it will then compare it to our price and essentially tell us if we should reduce the price, keep the price the same, or increase the price. Some important things is ignore empty competitor fields, convert all currencies to GBP, consider any potential outliers in the data. If our price is missing or invalid, respond only with NA, so not applicable. Reply with reduced price, keep price, or increase price. You know, that's just the only responses we want to keep the sheet nice and neat. So we've just kind of told it some brief instructions so it can go and analyze and give us some interesting data to work off. And then the last step is to add all of this information into our Google Sheet again. So essentially just putting all of this information over here. And as you can see, since our price was £150 and all of the other retailers essentially had the price a little bit higher than Cotswold Outdoor, we should go and increase the prices. It's recommendation essentially. And if I flick back to our automation over here, you can see we have site just essentially mapping all the different variables from site one price and site one URL, etc., all the way into our Google Sheet into the correct columns. And lastly, having price analysis, grabbing from the analyze price module before and putting that into our Google Sheet as well. Here are the two main automations we have over here with only one main change, that being if you want a more robust scraper, you can use Bright Data's web unlocker scraper, and if you just want the cheapest, freest, easiest version possible, then you can use the make.com already make a request module, which is a lot more cost effective. So it's entirely up to you which one of these you'd like to choose and which one you'd like to build out. It's a super cool automation as you can spy on your competitors and check what prices, and if they change their prices, you can run them more frequently and kind of have a look. I'm also going to show you a demo. Okay, so what I've done is I've added in a new product into here. And it's essentially these pair of shoes over here. As you can see, this is on the Cotswold Outdoor website. It's the North Face Men's Hedgehog GTX hiking shoes, £135. I've gone and added this into the sheet. And I'm gonna show you the demo with the Bright Data scraping just because it's a bit more robust. So I don't have this auto running. I don't have it on right now. So I'm gonna run it manually, choose where to start. I'm going to choose manually which module it should start from. So I'm going to choose it to run from the North Face Men's Hedgehog just so we can run it. And then I'm going to click run once and let's see what it does. So it's going to go, it's going to find all the other, it's going to search that term on Google, and then it's going to go and scrape all the different websites. Right now you can see it's going through it one by one. So this is on the third one now because of the iterator, now on the fourth one, and then the fifth one. And then lastly, it will run through this pathway in a minute. So let's just wait for that to happen. Okay, so it ran this bottom node as well. So let's have a look at what it did. Awesome. So we can see here, we have the North Face Hedgehog shoes. We price them at £135. And then we have the North Face website, mastershoe.co.uk. this other site over here and then Go Outdoors, you can see it's priced it scraped all the prices at £135, which seems accurate except for Master Shoe. So let's just take a look at that one. So if I click on Master Shoe over here, as you can see, they have a cheaper price. They've got it on sale essentially. And as you can see here, ChatGPT has told us to keep the price the same. This is pretty good because it's pretty accurate with most of the retailers. I guess this one's a little cheaper because it's put it on sale, but for the most part, it's pretty much like £135 for all the other major retailers. It's pretty competitive. So as you can see, it just basically grabs the first 4 or 5 different links and then gives you a really cool price analysis. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I'd appreciate if you interact with it. It helps out a ton, and I hope you learned something. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.